G'day Internet and welcome to River City Ransom Underground. My name is Andrew Russell. I'm the lead programmer on River City Ransom Underground. And in this series, I talk you through some of the technical features in the River City Ransom Underground engine. Now, so far, we have been talking about navigation, and as part of this sort of series on the AI systems, which it's turning out to be quite a long series because there's a lot to cover. Let me see if I can get my pen working. Here we go. Probably a good idea to draw in a color that's different from the background. So far we've discussed how we use A-star pathfinding on a sector map, which is made up of edges. So you recall, if we look at the game and I turn on the sector map view, you can see here it is. And if I add in my little navigator man, let's turn that off. I can click him in different places and he will move around. And so way back at the very start of this sort of sequence of episodes, one of the things that I said was, in an ideal world, if we have like as much computer power as we want, we would just say, here is the level and here are all of the pixels in the level and so on. And if we want to get from here to here, we would just, do a pathfind on, let's have my pen working the way I want it. Okay, we would do a pathfind on just the individual pixels of the level to get exactly the path we want with full information. But the thing is, this is slow because you recall that this test level that I have here, this one, I'll zoom out, this one is about 500 pixels wide, 500 wide by it is about 200 deep, which is 100,000 pixels. Not only that, it's possible, while this level is doesn't do it, it's possible to have levels that are quite high. So this level is 100 pixels high. It could be the case that we have a level that's, say, 400 pixels high. Now the thing about this is 100 pixels fits in, if we want to store that height, fits in one byte. It's, 1 byte can store values from 0 to 255, whereas this one we'd have to use 2 bytes. So that would be 0 to 65536 from memory is the sort of value you can store in 2 bytes. So then we need to do it that. We need to use 2 bytes. So then we're talking about 200,000 or so, roughly, bytes, which is a lot of bytes. And the thing about modern CPU performance, you want to fit as much stuff as you can in the CPU L1 cache. Spelling. Did I spell that correctly? Let's look it up. While we're here, let's look up CPU CACHE. Oh, I didn't spell it correctly. I am one of those programmers who has atrocious spelling. Anyway, suffice to say, let's have a quick look at, say, the Wikipedia article. It's basically, we've got a pretty picture. No, that's okay. Basically, what it is, I'm gonna scribble that out and I'm gonna try that again. How embarrassing, on stream and everything. There we go. L1 cache is, I'm trying to think, I think it's equal to about 64 kilobytes typically. And you have L2, maybe L3 and RAM. And as you go this way, and then over here you have HDD, which might be a SSD, might be faster than a hard disk. Then you have like network. And as you go down here, they get slower and so on and so on. So this is really fast and you want to stay in here as much as possible. And you know, as you get there, you know, it gets slower. But the thing is, there's only a small amount of this stuff because it's, you know, it's expensive, because it's right next to the CPU. It's like physically inside the CPU. Whereas this is off, you know, on the other side of the motherboard on a separate chip. But this, you know, you might have, I think I have 12 gigabytes of RAM in this system that I'm using. It used to be 16, but one of the sticks broke. Whereas, you know, so this is a lot smaller than that. So you're going to keep the amount of data that we're putting into the cache down in size, which is why we broke the level up into sectors. You remember that, you know, I drew, hang on, let me see if I can, recent, let's see if I still have this diagram available. Here we go. Yes, here's the old diagram. So you remember that I drew this. So we divided it up into sectors, and the reason we do that, whoops, is basically to reduce the amount of reduce the amount of memory that we take. So each sector has a lot more information than like 1 or 2 bytes. So like there's, I don't know, let's say it's about 20 bytes roughly. And you know, we might have 12 sectors, as we were saying. It could be 12, or as is the case, it might be 100 sectors. So that's 20 bytes times 100 sectors is 2 kilobytes, which is a lot less than 200 kilobytes. Which means, you know, we can operate on this data structure a lot more efficiently, and you know, not only will it fit on the CPU cache, we actually, you know, we only have to touch 100 things in sort of the worst case, whereas in the worst case here we might have to touch 200,000 things. So that, you know, doing it on pixels takes a long time, and we'd much rather do it on these sectors. It just sort of, the entire point is that this is an optimization. It makes it faster. But there is one thing that the optimization can't do for us, and that is if I were to come over here to the game and say I were to drop in a whole lot of crates. As you can see, if I turn on navigation map again, it doesn't account for the fact that there's now a whole lot of crates in the level. And you know, I can come over here and I can sort of boot them around and all of that stuff. I can pick them up and I can move them. And you know, the navigation map for the sector map for the level never changes because it's static data. We've pre-calculated. You remember that when several episodes ago when I was showing how we developed this system of setting up the sector map, it took like a quarter of a second to regenerate the sector map because we actually have to check. We actually have to do the check here, this one here, on many pixels to actually generate the sector map. So we can't do that in real time, we can't do it in the game. But we also can't, you know, we also have this problem that we have all of these crates that Glenn has gone and stacked up here. How on earth is the AI going to get around these things to where it wants to go? And so what we do is we have a system, and I'm going to bring up the whiteboard. This is the new whiteboard. And give it a title because it's quite important. We call this is the thing that we do to resolve this problem, we call it local obstacle avoidance. And the way we do this is we basically come up with a sort of localized area for what is happening at the level. So you can see here, it brings up, it shows the static area is the level, and I can walk it around, and it's basically a local version of this. So this is the height map for the entire level. So this is what the physics system is using. You can see the different objects in there, and you can see me moving around, and the physics system uses this, and we talked about this a fair bit. But we only query a small section of this every time we run physics. So if we walk into if we're walking into this wall, the physics system's only looking at this, just this one pixel here. Am I running into the wall there? It doesn't have to look at a larger area like it does over in the navigation map, which is covers the entire level, so we can see what's happening. We can plan out a path that takes us all the way across the level when we have our navigation guy. So let's put him in and let's move him around. And so what we do is we take this localized section of turn off that. We take this localized section of the world, and we generate a navigation map on that. You can see that this is just a debug view. So these ones that I'm generating just for display purposes, the AI just sort of generates the same thing again when it does its thing, but for the debug view, it just generates it for all of the characters, including the one that I can control. So I'm just going to use the one I can control for simplicity, so I can just drop him around. So not only does his sort of local view of the world cover everything around him, it also covers dynamic objects like these crates. And the thing about this is that it is a fixed size, and it's only the area around him. So you can't use this for long distance path planning, but you can use it for short distance path planning, which is why we call it local obstacle avoidance. Now the thing here is, we were saying that this is a lot of bytes, and it's a lot of pixels to test. So it's a lot of bytes, it's a lot of pixels to look at, it's time consuming. But if we can guarantee that the amount of data is small, suddenly we have an amount of data that might fit in L1 cache. Here's a fun fact for you. I'm saying cache, but one of the sort of the Australian way to pronounce that is actually cache. And I believe that Australia is the only country that actually, the real pronunciation of that is actually cache, not cache. But I try and say cache. Basically the same reason I spell color. Wow, spelling is just all over the place on this particular video. C-O-L-O-R. When I'm programming, even though in Australia we spell it C-O-L-O-U-R, like the British. But this one, pronouncing that cache, is a particularly Australian thing. Anyway, a little side note for you. So if you ever hear me say cache, it's because I'm Australian. So, local obstacle avoidance. The thing we have here is that we have a fixed size pixel grid. And I know, because I checked before, how big that is. So you can sort of see there, if I leave it flat, you can see that it's sort of about twice as wide as it is deep. There's a bit of an optical illusion going on. But suffice to say that it is 64 times 32 pixels. That gives us a local height map. And it's every entry in there is 1 byte, because we store based around the center of the guy who's standing there. So we have a guy here. We have a guy standing there. He might be standing on the edge of a cliff. and we only store values from -128 to 127. So that's the size of a signed byte, an S byte. So we know that this is equal to 2048 entries, which is also the same as 2 kilobytes. So it's very small. So yeah, so just finishing off that explanation, if we store that, that might be minus 120, and then that might be negative 150, but we just store that as too far, or negative 128, and we just treat all values that are negative 128 as that's a really big drop. So I'm not sure, this particular level is not tall enough to show that off, but suffice to say, if you jump high enough, it will just start drawing the floor. It will start drawing the very bottom of it at negative 128 below your current height, because that's the sort of amount of data we can store in there, because we're trying to do this quickly. So that's just the local height map. What we do after that is we generate something called a so this is a OCL height map, local height map. What we do is we then generate what we call a walk map, and this is why I took a little detour earlier in the video series. You remember that in episode 10 I talked about separation using Minkowski sums. So this is like a little trick that we use. So let's say we have a 2D local height map. So let's say our height map looks like this. I use the same colors I used in that episode for fans of the series. So let's say that is sort of an area like that. And we know that, the limit of where we can stand if we are a guy is up here. Because, if that's our walking object, and then our center of that object is right there. So we use the Minkowski sum situation to sort of add on that little bit. So what we end up with, let's convert it over here to a walk map. When we do the conversion, is we have the level, and then we could have a guy that might want to fit in here. So we add on sort of basically the half width there. So we know that, let's actually draw it all the way down to the ground because we're drawing accurately. We know that, if we put a guy here exactly, and, in the white area here and not in the sort of purple area or the pink area, we know that he will fit inside the level. He can actually, that is a location where you can walk. So we expand at a level. So let me show you what that looks like in here. There we go. So you'll see it gets a little bit shorter because that is the distance that we can expand. Basically, that is, we have to use up some pixels to get the expansion. But you can see now if I walk over to the crates, or even over here, that's the height map and that's the walk map. You see that it extends out, and so I can walk right up to the corner of that, and as soon as I walk one more pixel, I drop off. And as you can see, if I stand here at the edge, that's where I am. So this gives a really accurate representation of where you can actually walk. So this is what we actually do local obstacle avoidance on, because we know that we know that we can stand there, and we know that we can stand up there, but we can't get into this little gap here. And you can see if I turn that off briefly, and you can see if I turn on the navigation map, it actually lines up because it's you know, the character's the same height. We can't walk like I'm walking into that wall there, and I'm right on the edge of that. Let's turn that back on. You see that the two maps line up quite accurately because they're based on the same character width. Anyway, so that's what we do. We generate this walk map. And so when the AI comes along and you know, it thinks that it's in a sector. So let's say it's in a sector, like I said, you know, it thinks that a sector is freely walkable. So it's quite cheerful, it's quite happy about the fact that it can just cruise on through there without doing anything to get to wherever it's going. But some silly person has gone and stuck a crate in the middle of that. So what it does is when it's walking, it does local obstacle avoidance. So it will look on the walk map at what's coming up. It will just look forward by where it expects to be in the next several frames, and says, well, I'm about to walk into this, you know, ledge here that I didn't expect to be there, and that I can't just walk through. I have to jump. So it will just jump. As soon as it sees that, it will just hit the jump button and jump up over it. Now, let me demonstrate that to you, and then we'll talk about it some more. So I'll turn off some of the debug view. I'll turn off the walk map for now. We'll turn it back on in a sec. I'll get my navigator guy. We're going to walk him here, and we want him to go there, and he's just going to jump over those crates and go around the side. You know, I can walk on the crates just fine. So you can see that having these local obstacles is no problem whatsoever. So he just jumps straight on over there. So if I turn back on the walk map, you can see, you know, this probably not especially meaningful, but you can see the data that he's using to do that local obstacle avoidance. And it also works with drops. So now obviously there's nothing in the game that can carve out areas of the level in real time. But what we do have is, you know, and I think you just saw a little bit of it there. There is the case where pathfinding gets turned off. So I'm going to turn on navigation info. No. Which one is navigation info? No. I've forgotten which one navigation info is. What's the bet I hit some weird key doing this? Is it that one? No. Is it that one? No. 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 This is a cool effect. But no, not that one. All right, well, suffice to say, I was going to show you now I've turned on something that I don't. Oh, here we go. So you can see above his head, pathfind, and that tells you the path he's going to take and the sort of navigation mode that he's in. If he gets too stuck doing pathfinding, which is possible if the local set of obstacles is too complicated, he can go into, as you can see there, dumb walk, which basically means just drive straight at the target. And most of the time that will get him out of trouble. So pathfinding is pretty much guaranteed to complete on most circumstances, like on a static level, but because people can put crates anywhere, we need to have some backup strategies in case pathfinding fails. And so we basically do a dumb walk and then random walk. You saw that briefly pop up there. So if basically if you get stuck, so if you box them in, they will try a whole lot of things to get out of that boxed in position. Anyway, so the point behind that is when he's doing the dumb walk, he still has access to local obstacle avoidance, and he'll still use this to jump over things in a sector, but he then starts completely ignoring the fact that, you know, this is a sector, and he just looks at the local walk map or the walk map, and he just says, well, you know, it might look like this, and I mean, I'm trying to get from, I know I'd have to draw this in 3D maybe, but he's trying to get from here to, say, you know, say that's the sort of set of stairs here. He knows not to walk this way because the he can see in the walk map that, you know, that is a ledge. He can see that, no, I don't want to go down there, I don't want to drop. So the local obstacle avoidance is also used for the cases where pathfinding gets turned off for whatever reason. Say you hit him into some place he wasn't expecting to get to, or you stuck enough boxes in his way to interrupt his path. We have alternates to pathfinding to just sort of make sure the characters never get stuck. So we'd rather them walk around a bit lost rather than having them sort of standing still and just giving up. Because usually if you like have them move just a little bit, they'll get back onto their path. You notice before when I was showing this that if he goes into dumb walk mode, it goes back into pathfinding mode pretty swiftly. I think he's going into dumb walk there because I'm actually clicking on the wall here. He's trying to get to there and it's like, well, I can't find a path onto that wall. Most of the time he's actually managing to get through these boxes when I'm actually giving him a sane target. So like I just give him a sane target there, but I think if I do what I was doing before and I click on this wall, yeah, it can't generate a path to get to the wall itself. And so it, it does weird things. But that's fine because we never actually, like when the game tries to set a path, it actually looks at the navigation map that we were showing before and checks that it's actually a sane place to put a endpoint. So it doesn't try and set a path, in the air or like under something where it can't get to. Anyway, come back here. We'll turn that off. Maybe we even pause it so you stop jumping around. So that's local obstacle avoidance part 1, and I'm going to go into part 2. This is not a 2-part video, but yeah, this is the first thing we do is we generate this local walk map. The other thing we do, and we do it based on what we find in the local walk map, is we generate like a danger map. So let me show you what that looks like with a new layer. So say we have a level that looks maybe like that. There's a cliff with a big drop, and there's that classic, like, we don't actually draw these or have them as such in the game, but we do have deadly pits, so we just pretend there's spikes in the bottom and we don't want to fall in there. So what we do, we have a guy there, and we'll pretend that this is going 3D back into the level like that. When we generate our walk map, we say this, like, these are the two heights, and this might be relatively 0, so that's 0, and that's, as we were saying before, like, it could be neg 128, but it could be neg 100, and we just know that deadly pit is at neg 100. So we just know that this area here is deadly. So what we end up with is we have a map that looks like, here's a nice happy place to walk. Holy cow, don't jump in here. We also can have the case where, say, when we're pathfinding, for instance, and we know that there's a ledge here, and this might be perfectly safe to walk on, but we are trying to get to, say, from here to here, we know that we don't actually want to drop down, so we can actually end up with a thing that says, here's our danger map, and this is a perfectly fine area to walk, but this is not as dangerous as a deadly pit, but this is an area where we'd rather avoid. And so what we do is we do basically a simple blur on this danger map. So what ends up happening is maybe I will actually do a blur. Let's select an area so it doesn't take forever. Let's do this nicely. So let's say this is our danger map, and everything in red gets counted as danger. And then maybe there's like a little rock of hope in the middle of our thing, draw that in a more orangey orange. And that's slightly less dangerous, but still dangerous. Or still somewhere where we don't want to go. And so that might look like, we have a cliff that we quite happily standing on, and maybe at the bottom there's like a little outcropping that's safe to stand on, and then everywhere else is like, deadly, and we're standing right on the edge here because as I said, the guy's centered. So what we do then is we basically run a simple blur. It doesn't have to be a wide blur, certainly not as wide as I'm about to do, because these are pixels, so there's only a small amount of data that we're touching. And so I will do, blur, Gaussian blur. Let's crank that up, 30. Or even 40. And that's roughly, let's make sure I have my pen tool. Select none, thank you. Somehow, there we go, perfect. So that is sort of effectively what gets generated for the danger map. And what we do is when we're trying to find a path for a location, we might be we'll be standing in the middle of it. And when we're trying to decide where to go, we'll be like, well, we can go into orange, like it's a little bit orange, we can go in there if we absolutely must, but we'd rather go away from that. And if we get sent, like we look like we're driving into an area that's, red, we just go in the opposite direction. We want to stay well away from that. And that's basically how it works, is we just look at the gradient. So another way to look at that is, this is the level of danger is sort of going up on the y-axis, and so down here it's 0. We're coming up here, and over here it goes up a little bit till we hit this orange section. So let's say this is the plane across the middle, and then we're about to hit the red section, which we go right up, way up, and then the rest of it's red. And so what it tries to do is it tries to sort of pick directions when it's trying to find a way to go that go downhill or stay at 0, rather than, it will definitely avoid trying to go uphill in this map. So that's how that works, and it just makes sure that the AI avoids this sort of deadly areas in particular, and sort of avoids falling off edges of things. And yes, so unfortunately there's no way to view that in the engine at the moment. So I wanted to show something. What did I want to show? Let me have a look at my notes. I think that's everything. We build an energy map and we avoid deadly pits. So a danger map was sort of basically like a energy map. And so, these areas have high energy, and we try and reduce the amount of energy in our current location. Oh yes, what I was going to say was, you will recall in the episode, I brought the thing back up. So in this episode here, that some of these places, some of these locations going towards an edge, like we can have 2 or 3 different directions that are valid. Like we'll have one preferential, like it's probably that one, but there's a secondary direction. Like we can say, well, maybe if we can't go that way, maybe we'll go that way. And so that's the other place where we use this sort of gradient climbing or falling, this energy reducing thing, is where we're like, well, we can go in that direction, or we can go in that direction to get to where we're going. And we're going to pick that one because it, it's going from here to here rather than here to exactly the same place. So like just staying put, that reduces the energy. So it will pick that direction preferentially, just to keep things away from like places where we don't want the AI to stand. And then because what we do, so it doesn't just like if we have like a craggly edge of something, so the AI doesn't just go like along that edge as this path. What it will do, because say like I'm saying that the bottom of this giant cliff is like all of this deadly spikeage in deadly spike red. So we don't want the AI to make a path that's like, whoa, let's follow the edge of this, man. What it will do, it will start here and be like, well, I want to go down that way, but I can't go down that way because I'm going to fall in the pit, so I'm going to go that way. And as soon as it goes that way, it will preference keeping going that way. So what ends up happening is it takes, so say the destination is here, it takes this route as soon as it's if there's no other inputs to its direction system, so there's no danger to avoid or anything, it will just keep going in the same direction it's going. So you get this nice path with as few of these corners, these elbows in it as possible, which is, as we were saying before, something that we try and avoid having, because that ends up having giving us more natural paths. So we're similar to this situation here. We're avoiding having boom, 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 boom. Like we'd much rather just go boom, boom in nice long straight lines, because it feels and sort of behaves more like a human controlling the character. So that little explanation of local obstacle avoidance is everything that I had to show you for this episode. So this is the last recording session in today's recording session. You'll notice I have not changed shirts because I've recorded all of these back to back. So I hope you enjoyed my little discussion about the navigation system in River City Ransom Underground. And so later on, if I don't come up with anything else about navigation that I suddenly realize that I want to talk about, we'll move on to talk about another factor of the AI, which will probably be the combat system, which I know a lot of you are interested in seeing how that works. So thank you again for watching. Now, if you would like to follow along, you can find my blog at andrewrussell.net, and I will post these videos as they get uploaded. You can follow me on Twitter at _AndrewRussell, and I will also post these videos when they get uploaded. Or you can subscribe to me on YouTube, at which point you'll get a notification when the video gets uploaded. I think there's a thing where you have to subscribe and click a little bell icon that says get notifications or something like that. But you will at least be subscribed. You can follow me, you can follow the game on Twitter at River City Ransom, and you'll notice that the at River City Ransom account will retweet all of my videos as I post them to my Twitter. And similarly, you can follow the game on Facebook at River City Ransom Game on Facebook, and they also post the videos onto that page as well. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you found it interesting, and I hope you will check out the next several episodes as well. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.